Without further ado, and I want to have him back up in the near future. We've got him for 45 minutes now, and that is Brian Gerrish. Sir, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Again, I apologize for getting you on late. You got the floor. Break down how you learned about this, why you're involved, why you've been on some UK television speaking out against this. Go over what this common purpose is and how this nexus is in with the Stasi.
Right, okay. Well, for your listeners that don't know me, I'm an ex-naval officer. I left the Navy as a lieutenant commander, set up in business. Eventually, I became what I call comfortable, and I started to look at trying to help some of the local community, deprived areas, unemployment, general picture of decline. And together with some other people, we tried to set up a training course to give particularly younger people skills training and jobs. Initially, everything went well, and then when we were supposed to apply for some grant funding, it was like a door was shut in our face. So all of the public bodies that we had been talking to suddenly stopped talking to us, whether it was the city council or development agencies or quangos or the local chamber of commerce. The contact all stopped, and it was just like a door shut. And we thought this was strange, but we just decided to press on with the project ourselves because we had support from local people, a lot of support. And then we, in a very short space of time, we started to be threatened. And initially it was suggestions that we should stop the project. And then when we didn't stop it, it became late-night knocks on the door, threats, death threats, arson attempts, and bricks through windows. We couldn't understand what was happening. And one evening I was asked to go and meet a man, and I did. And he said to me, "You're having problems?" And I said, "Yes." And he asked me, did I know what was causing it? And I said, "No." And he said to me, "I think it's common purpose." Now, I'd never heard of the organization, so I asked him to tell me more. He said he'd rather not, and that was a very strange answer from somebody who'd apparently asked to see me. But I realized that the man was very nervous, and I tried to get information from him, but he wouldn't tell me much more. So I eventually left. We did discuss some things about the city, Plymouth, where I live, but I came home and looked at a website for an organization called Common Purpose. And what I found was an organization which was talking about creating future leaders in society.
All right, stay there. Stay there, sir. We have the same thing here. Back when I was a mainline conservative, I would try to build a veteran a house because they were going to tear it down. Suddenly we were getting death threats. Police were coming up in plain clothes saying, "Do you want to attack police?" They don't want any real community activism because that brings sovereignty and local control. And in England, in Europe, in Australia, in the U.S., they go after everybody. We're back live. The same thing's being done here in the U.S. The state police, the Army, we got the documents last week. We called them, they confirmed it, are in the Fed protest. We had Army intelligence watching us. It said we were basically terrorists. Ron Paul's a terrorist. You know, all the supporters are terrorists. All their community organizing's okay and federally run, but anything else they go after. And that's what our guest is saying is going on with this common purpose. We're learning more about it. Steve Watson's written a story about it. They're clearly going into a Stasi society. Sir, please continue with what you were covering, Brian Gerrish.
Right, well, Alex, the first thing I'll just say in reply to your comment about the close down, this was one of the key things that we really began to understand later, is that a simple community project, which is going to get people trained, get pride back, and get people earning money and a pride in their community, they don't want that. And that is the reason the project was closed down. I'm very sure that was the reason. They don't want people to be proud, to be well-fed and well-organized. But if I continue the story, once we discovered Common Purpose, particularly myself and another ex-military man started to research it in a professional way. And we were just amazed to find that an organisation we'd never heard of was everywhere in the city, in Plymouth, in the southwest of England. It was even in the Chamber of Commerce, which I was working with, and yet those people never declared themselves. It was in the police, it was in the local authority, it was in the government bodies, it was in the hospitals. And at that stage, the head teacher of every school in Plymouth was also common purpose trained. Now, when we were able to look at key documents, and that my colleague here was able to see documents where common purpose was talking about controlling a host city, if you could actually recruit and train a few key people in a city, those in positions of power, you could actually control the city. So if you had the chief executive of the local authority, if you had the planning officer, if you had the legal officer, if you had the head of police, in that way you could actually start to steer the policy.
And then they bring in more of their people, and it literally takes over.
That is absolutely it, because if I can try and just sum this up for people, if you imagine an Amway-type system, and I know that you know Amway, pyramid selling, but instead of pyramid selling, what you're doing is pyramid recruiting of people into this common purpose. And what they are doing is training them in a particular way to go and train others. Now, we are pretty sure that what they're doing is neuro-linguistic programming, but it means that once people are brought on board, they will select the ones who have the greatest influence and power, and they are the ones who they will then groom to control things.
And by the way, it's admitted that Obama is doing all these little mind tricks in everything he does. Now, I've seen articles that Common Purpose is now involved in the 60,000 community spies that the government's called for.
Well, that was something that came out in the press a few days ago, that 50,000, I will call them low-grade officials, were going to be used to report on people. And we're now starting to see people such as traffic wardens being given powers of arrest. And I can tell you that one of our strong supporters, who's a lovely lady from Germany, she's in her 80s, and she will tell us that every single step she sees happening in the UK at the moment, she saw happening as the Nazis came to power. She was bombed out in Hamburg, and she is literally pulling her hair out, saying, why can't people see that exactly the same system is establishing itself in the United Kingdom?
Well, we have that in Austin. We have these federally controlled groups, and they're intelligence agencies, and they'll be at a restaurant, they'll just walk right over. The governor will walk right over when I'm at Loyola Leon in front of witnesses and say, you have a nice Thanksgiving, Alex. And then one time he was on the show, was, calling me names and things. The point is, they are very arrogant about this, and it's a good old boys club, and they've taken over. And you say 50,000. I saw the BBC report. They're recruiting 60,000 citizens. They have InfraGard here, 50,000 executives with secret shoot-to-kill orders. That's mainstream news. 26,000 preachers in the clergy response teams. We got their secret documents a year and a half later. Mainstream news confirmed it. That they are preparing us for martial law and to have their flocks go to FEMA camps, sir.
Yes, I've seen your material and other people's material on this in the States.
All right, stay there. A long segment. I know we've had a lot of breaks here. This is the time of the show when we have them. Long segment coming up. Stay there. Let's break this to folks. You can't make this type of stuff up. This is how societies are taken over by intelligence operations, and they use front charities and others to do it. We'll be right back with our guest. I haven't lived through Nazi Germany, but I've read probably, 60, 70 books on it. I haven't lived through Soviet Russia, but I've read dozens of books on it, including Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. This is how they take over, and they admit that through community groups and organizations they're taking over. They don't want anybody to have any power in the community under COINTELPRO and FBI documents. Mainline churches that aren't part of the system, they spy on them. Mainline groups. This is the control. This is why our society won't work, why we can't ever get communities going to change the government. Because on every issue of wars and open borders and high taxes and regulations and bailouts, you'll have 70 to 99%, depending on the poll on those issues, the vast majority against it, but it just continues. Because they control the whole system, and now they're going for broke. And Obama's announcing they're trying to pass compulsory service. It's in the House and Senate right now. Schwarzenegger's, all these homeless people, he's making them go to a camp now. I'm sending reporters to California. That's Bloomberg Financial. You can't sleep on the street or in your car now. You got to go to the place where all the drug addicts and everybody else are at with your family. CPS will be there grabbing your kids. But England, I mean, it is really bad. I've got a lot of friends and people in England, two folks that work with me, and Watson was looking at his town, and all the common purpose people are also in the anti-terror operations now, and that's in Sheffield. Same thing in London. Going back to Brian Gerrish, and that's how this happens. You try to get involved in the community, and you just run into this brick wall of these people.